So hopefully you can see the transition here. This morning we talked about ways that we can reduce OpEx, but sometimes that comes at a kind of a difficult decision when you're having to invest significant money in the technology. And even though it will reduce money over time, now we're going to talk about, hey, some of this is even going to be the same technology, but how you can now use it to bring in revenue. And that perks up everyone's ears when it's like, oh, you can actually bring in more dollars? Let's talk. What do I have to spend to get that additional revenue? So we'll kick things off with number one on our list and turn it over to Tyler. He's going to talk about, and I don't even know if this is a real word. I know I'm going to butcher it when I say it, but he says it so well, amenitization. And Tyler, talk about how you're able to use technology to drive revenue through this.
We found, a few different ways to drive additional revenue using technology. One of them stood out, was really successful for us, that we amenitized the units with technology itself. So, for instance, we created a technology amenity package that includes like a Nest thermostat, screen TVs, Roku TVs, front loader washer and dryer, and other smart appliances, which essentially increases the value of the unit. And we've actually seen it increase by $125 to $200. And after a few years, we would have recouped our investment, and we would have just immediately started profiting, um, based off the higher value. Now, what we did during that time frame is where we strategically placed these technology packages, in units that historically sit on the market a little bit longer. So by doing that, in some cases, we saw average vacant days reduced by 60%. So on top of getting the additional income on the amenitized units, we're also reducing vacancy costs.
So, Diana, you've done some of the same things of having kind of a tech package for particular units that are able to drive additional revenue. Anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, and I think that might be one of the topics that we'll touch upon later. But in terms of having tech package, it does attract interested tenants if they see that there's tech packages actually offered, and it gives them a little bit more incentive to want to lease out in that property. So it does actually quite, I think it's effective.
Okay. We're going to jump right into number two. Christy, tell us about pet-enabled solutions.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge the status quo here, because for the 25 years that I've worked in the industry, we have traditionally charged pet fees and pet deposits, and we have limited the breed types that we allow in our units. What we're starting to see now is people are taking the Southwest Airlines approach of no baggage fees with pet fees. So they're doing away with pet fees, but instead they're amenitizing these areas more for pets, and people are willing to pay for those. So although you're giving up your pet fees, one, that's helping you attract the renters, because that sounds great. If you're advertising pet-friendly apartments and we charge 0 fees, it's going to get the renters' attention. So you're getting their attention at the top of the funnel, essentially. But then once they're there, you're creating a stickier, we talked in the last panel about just sticky and people wanting to stay. So you're creating these amenities that are convenient for them, they want to use, but they're paying extra for those. So whether they're paying each time they use it, or you can even see some subscription models with this. So some examples of amenities would be dog grooming stations or dog wash stations. Something like that can be a subscription model. So they pay a certain dollar amount per month for unlimited washes in the pet grooming station. Well, if anyone has pets, grooming is not cheap, and that's just one of the amenities. You have pet concierge services that you can offer, but what we saw was a huge uptick in people adopting pets during the pandemic because people were home and they had more time to train puppies, and so we're feeling that now 2 and 3 years later, and more people are working from home. About 30% of renters are working from home. So if you pair those two together, people are into their dogs right now. I have 3 of them. I never thought that we would have 1, and we have 3. My husband just keeps bringing them home. So, and they're in my office with me all day long, and it's just, they become a part of your life. So we have to start catering to these animal renters also, along with the human renters. But what it does when you also add these amenities, and you can charge a little extra for these, is it's saving you too on damages to the unit. So if you think about if someone is grooming their pet in the bathroom, all of that fur has to go somewhere, and that's clogging your drains. Or if the dog's been outside to your dog park and now it's muddy, you know, I'm in Ohio, we've had snow and ice recently, and so they're bringing their dog back in and walking all down your hallways, and now your team has to clean that area, but you're short-staffed. You don't have the maintenance staff to do that, whereas they could come right into that dog wash area, rinse off the paws, and then they're going up to their unit. So it really, you can get some revenue out of it, but it also is on the other side too with savings, helps solve some of these other challenges that we're seeing.
If I interrupt for just a
Yeah.
second, taking that Southwest model, if you really understand why Southwest does no bag fees, is they're trying to maximize, it all comes down to how quickly they can onboard the passengers and get them off, because they want to maximize this fixed cost in a plane. And what they're able to do is where their competitors are able to take a single plane and do, 3 or 4 flights in a day, because Southwest has been able to turn it around fast enough, they can get 4 or 5 flights a day. The amount of revenue they lose in not charging for bag checks is more than compensated by the fact that they are able to get additional revenue from that fixed asset.
Right.
Same thing, if you can position yourself in a market where perhaps it's a property or an area where occupancy rates aren't quite as high, if you can turn it into a pet friendly and you can maximize, and all of a sudden now you're taking something that was a not quite full occupancy and get it full, that amount of money you're making by keeping that fixed asset full, despite losing some revenues for pet, is going to more than make up for the difference. And then I think being strategic like that in certain areas, if you're in an area where you already have high occupancy, maybe it doesn't make sense to do this, but it can be a strategic differentiator in an area where you're really trying to outcompete the others in the market and fill up your spaces.
Yeah, there's a property, there are several examples of this, but there's one called 988. It's in San Francisco, and they have as many amenities for the dogs as they do the humans, and that's sort of their mantra. And that word spreads quickly, and we see this a lot in student housing where we have high international demographics. Well, once someone from one area or one background, lives in the place, well, that's where all of the other people like them want to live. It's just, you want to be around people who are like you.
Network effects.
So other pet owners, the word is going to spread and you'll become known as, and I certainly, I don't want to say don't worry about damages, because that does happen, but I live in a house of boys and my boys have done more damage than my pets ever have, so I don't know.
Yes, this is true. All right, next up, number 3, managed internet. We talked about that this morning, so Diana, tell us a bit about, and I think you kind of hinted at this morning as well, how this not only is helping reduce OpEx in ways, but it can bring some revenue.
Right, yeah. So managed internet is becoming more popular nowadays. And sometimes it's bulked in as a tech package as well. So in Arizona, we have it as a part of a tech package. So in the tech package, it's including the internet and the smart systems, right? And so we can charge the tenants maybe like $75 for having a tech package. And then we pay out of our pocket as owners maybe $50 a unit, right? So then that premium of $25 is our other income. And sometimes the tech package is separate from the managed internet, and then it's just managed internet. In Texas, we're doing managed internet for one of our property where it's $30 per unit. And then we charge $30 out of our pocket as operators per unit. And then we charge the tenants $60 a month for paying for the managed internet. So what's nice about managed internet is that you have one internet provider to be able to provide it, and provides convenience for the tenants themselves to have internet when they move in, so they don't have to be shopping around for different internet providers. So there is a level of economy of scale and convenience for the tenants themselves to be able to access internet and for day one of moving in. So that's definitely one of the components we look at if we look at a property and see if there's a market in that market that it makes sense to implement the managed internet package.
And my understanding, talking to both vendors and other companies, like Landmark comes to mind that I know with their student housing. If you've architected your managed internet using the right equipment ahead of time, you have the ability that every device that's getting loaded on is attributed to a specific customer, and you can control the bandwidth for that customer, programmatically through software. And so you can actually charge them for higher tiers if you wanted to, and potentially drive additional revenue by going from a 100 megabyte package to a half a gig to a full gig. And you don't have to change anything as long as you've got the right hardware in there to start off with.
Yeah, and I think you all might have this figure already, but a Buildium survey that was just done this year that I was reading, the average that people were willing to pay for the Wi-Fi was like $47. Now I'm sure that that's an average nationwide, but I think that probably changes a little depending on the market you're in. But to your point about usage, that's just a good benchmark.
Yeah, usage when you're looking at work from home, more Zoom conferences, people are willing to pay for more. You start looking into the gaming segment, that we've got a whole generation who's really into gaming. They're willing to pay more for both bandwidth and for latency if you can deliver it.
Oh yeah, don't turn off the Xbox. You don't want to know what happens when that goes down.
Okay, next up, we'll turn it over to Christy. Talk about tech-enabled storefronts.
Yeah, mobile storefronts. This is really interesting. There are some communities doing this. I would love to see this take off more. I think it falls in the realm of convenience. I'm curious, how many of you here currently live in an apartment? Does anybody in here live in an apartment? Don't be shy.
Over here
Okay. Only a few.
in the back.
But for those of us who probably live in a home, it's really easy when we need something in the neighborhood. We walk out the front door, walk out the garage, hop in our car, and we run to the grocery store. We run to get whatever we need. But when you're in an apartment, that scenario, whether you're suburban or urban or high-rise building, it's really a little bit different. It takes a little longer. You walk down the hallway and you might get in an elevator, and then you're going out to the parking garage and walking across the parking deck, and then you're getting in your car and going. Or you might not have a car at all. And so these mobile storefronts are essentially, I'm seeing more and more of these in the airports now too, but there's really no reason why we can't have these in our buildings. And so Tulu is one that has recently come across my radar. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I just think it's a cool product. And they are mobile storefronts, but they are programs for your building in your demographics that you have there. So you might have, for example, in student housing, students might not have a vacuum cleaner. And so that's what you are leasing in and out of that mobile storefront are cleaning supplies or your vacuum cleaner and things that students just don't have. They haven't built that up yet. If you are in a high rise with a more established renter, you're offering conveniences, you're offering groceries and just things that they maybe don't want to have to run out and get. Some of these are bike or scooter rentals. A lot of properties are doing that now, but it's really interesting because you get the data as to what is being purchased and what's not. You're typically paid a fee to have this storefront in your property, and then you're making a commission on everything that those renters are using, buying, renting, however you have that set up. But there's really no limit to what you can include in these mobile storefronts, but it's another convenience. So I would challenge you to think through how much are their residents really using your physical amenities, the ones that wow them when they come and tour, but do they really use that? Are you managing and tracking the foot traffic into your pool, your fitness center, your business center, all of these amenity areas that we have? Because this isn't necessarily an amenity area, but it is something that you can monetize, and that is a convenience that people are looking for. They don't want to have to leave. Again, 30% of renters are working from home. And so if they can just run downstairs and grab this thing that they're out of, it could be Tylenol, it could be drugstore type of things.
Tammy kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday.
Okay.
We see it in the hotel that we're in right now. You go down the bottom floor, you've got some amenities, including snacks, food, toiletries, that there are vendors out there who can make it so that they're replenishing that inventory. They've got a point of sale, that doesn't require someone to be there. Video cameras to help make sure you're addressing any shrink, and seems to work
Yeah,
well.
it's a pretty hands-off approach for the operators, but again, is a nice convenience for the renters. And about 70% of them say that they wouldn't want to go without it once they've had it.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting too.
That makes sense. All right, next up, tell us about what you're doing in the laundry space in your properties there.
Yeah. The kind of properties that we buy are the B class and C class properties, so they're already existing, and a lot of times these older properties have a centralized laundry area, a laundry room where they use coins to do their own laundry and whatnot. In the wake of the pandemic, it became much more popular to have an in-suite washer dryer unit in the apartment unit, right? So we saw a lot more demand for those type of products. So whenever we look at a property, we do underwrite for a washer dryer in the unit. So we would have to consider the cost of the washer dryer hookups, as well as the what kind of how do we obtain the appliance? Either we lease it from a larger company, and or do we purchase it, right? So in our last property, we leased these laundry appliances. So we come into an existing unit, we tell our contractor we're going to do a washer dryer hookup. They come in, it takes like $1,500 to $2,000 to do the washer dryer hookups, and then after that they install the laundry vendor will come in and install their appliance, and then so we lease it out from the laundry company for $25 a month per unit, and then we charge the tenants $75 per unit. So then there's that delta of $50. So we like using that as a way to generate some additional revenue for the property, and it's pretty robust, especially if you have a 200 plus unit property and you can imagine having $50 extra per unit. That does really boost up the NOI of the property. In the Dallas property we're gonna close next week, we are planning to purchase the laundry appliances instead of leasing them. And it's kind of the cost benefit analysis. How long do you, in terms of your business model, are you planning to hold it for 5 years? Are you planning to hold it for 10 years, right? Does it make sense to purchase it versus leasing it? So in this particular property, 152 unit, we're planning to purchase it. It's only because we're planning to do a hookup of only about 100 of units instead of all units, right? So in that case, it made sense for us to purchase the appliances and then the laundry units, and then we saw that we will get some turn in profits once it hits year 2 afterwards. So definitely laundry room is something that we always consider whenever we look at properties.
So do you have any of your properties where you still have kind of a laundromat room, or is it?
Yeah, so good question. So whenever there is a laundry room that exists in a property, when we do implement the in-suite laundry appliances, we consider converting the existing laundry room into a studio or 1 bedroom. So in itself can increase the value of the property itself. So that's another revenue generation right there, because once you add 1 unit, or maybe it becomes 2 units out of 1 space, and then that just adds additional value, because apartments are based on cap rates. And so when you have the apartment values are based on cap rates. And so when you're able to add 1 more unit to the whole income, right, in terms of leasing and getting the rent out of it, then it really helps boost up the value of the property about $200,000. So it's definitely something that we consider every time we look at a property. It's like, okay, if we're going to be installing the washer dryers in these units, are we going to also convert it? But if we're going to install washer dryer, are we going to install in all the units or just part of the units, or in all of the units, or just partially? Because if it's just partial, then maybe we need to keep the laundry room, because only some units have the washer dryer hookups, and so we still want to have the tenants access the laundry room whenever they want.
And on where you do continue to have a laundry room, is there any technology upgrades you'll do there to kind of remove the coins from the process and kind of move to
Ideally,
digital?
yeah. I mean, I think we're all trying to move away from using the coins,
Yeah.
right? But the thing is that with our base that we work with, especially Class C properties, a lot of the workforce housing, the demographic tends to hold a lot of cash or have like coins. So we have to evaluate based on the tenant's profile that we have. So if it's a Class B, it's much more likely that they don't want to carry coins. They want to have a card or credit card and such. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, number 6, back to Christy. Convenience services. Tell us about this.
Well, people will always pay for convenience. I mean, I will pay more to get in the front of the boarding line in the airport. I will pay to have my groceries delivered. I mean, it's endless. And this is something that we've started to monetize. We, I think, can do a better job here. So a couple of ideas is if you've probably the last several years really tried to work through managing your packages. That's really important. But also, have you considered the side of the food delivery? Grocery delivery and food delivery, you've got to have refrigerated areas for that. If you don't have that, that becomes a convenience that now is being taken away from your renter. If they lived somewhere else, or for those of us who live in a home, we can get DoorDash delivered and, we're there to accept it. So thinking through those things, but people, again, sometimes are willing to pay a price for that. Another thing would be your social events. And a lot of properties are programmed and they have regular social events. And most of the time, I don't see people charging for these. It's something that I don't know if the renters just expect us to put these on or if that's just how it's always been. We've just always hosted these. But if it's something that is worthwhile and fun, people are, again, willing to pay for it. So if you're doing cooking classes, if you are, last Friday night, I went to a Girl Scout cookie pairing. That was fun. If you have not done that, I highly recommend it. That is something where, you're partnering up with a place in the neighborhood and doing something like that, but people come to that. Music bingo. We play music bingo at our local brewery that we like. And again, you pay for that and it's not a big cost, but you're making some money on those things. So I think that's just interesting there of thinking through what are you already doing that you can't just start charging for a pool party because you've had pool parties for the last 20 years and people are used to coming to those. But what is, you're already hosting social events. And so what parts of those can you monetize that your renter doesn't feel like you're taking it away from them or now forcing them to pay, but it's worth them paying for that. So we have all of these conveniences, no matter what it is. And every property's program looks a little different. So I just challenge everyone to look at what you can charge for there. If you have people come in who are of authority or thought leadership and people are willing to pay for workshops and self-development things, goal board, vision board workshops. I mean, people will pay for things like this if it's something that fits with your demographic. And we haven't charged for it before.
Yeah, Gen Z, statistics and surveys show that they really do value experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And finding ways to create unique and valuable experiences for them, even within their kind of the home area, they're willing to pay for that.
And it's funny because we are still in a lot of markets seeing double-digit rent increases. Our units are the same. So our only area to really step things up is on the service side and the experience side. And that is where better programming, better focus on experience, and you can charge for that. And they're actually paying more for that plus the rent increase.
Right.
But because they perceive the value as being better, their experience has been better.
Makes sense. Okay, moving on to number 7, back over to Diana. What's affectionately referred to as RUBS. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so racial utility billing services. This is a pretty popular way to generate some additional other income to your property. So instead of the tenant receiving separate bills for their water, for their gas, for their electricity, they get one bill coming from us, which is actually tacked on to their base rent. So this is essentially a way for the operators to generate additional income. It provides convenience for the tenant where they don't have to deal with the bills themselves and just pay one flat rate to their landlord, the operators. And so it's a neat way to kind of increase the revenue. And so if it's a 1-bedroom, then the RUBS would be $50 a unit. If it's a 2-bedroom, it's a $60 per unit. Right, and so you typically would try to utilize a RUB system, and so it also depends on the property and the market. If there's a property that is in the market where none of the competitors are using RUBs, then we won't try to implement RUBs. But if it's a property that is within the competitors are also doing rubs, then we'll do rubs.
What kind of technology do you need in place to be able to enable that?
The technology, not so much. It's really just kind of all the bills just kind of like come to the operator, and then we kind of consolidate and pay. So the thing about rubs is the fact that sometimes it's the energy use will spike during the summer when it gets really hot, and so sometimes we'll go into the negative. But then when during the winter time, then there's not as much of a spike. Then we start to see some profit or positive side of that. But in general, the average, we would typically make some profit off of just rubs. In terms of technology, nothing so specific that I know of, but yeah.